Hey everyone, welcome to another one of my album reviews. My name is Christian Eschbach, and today I am going to be taking a look at an album that I learned so much from, and I picked up way too late in my life. But I'm happy I picked it up as late in my life as I did, because when I start explaining and getting into this, I learned I learned way too much from this album just by hearing the very first song on this album. Um, Now, before I get into this, there's this on-running thing always in music. We've all heard about the lawsuits from people covering or accidentally writing riffs that were written by other musicians first. Zeppelin gets hit with this regularly, and in some cases it's debatable and arguable. But in the case of like Trampled Underfoot, they always argue that it was just purely coincidental that they wrote a song that sounded very much like a song that was done by, I want to say, Robert Johnson or something like that. Back in the 30s. And the reason why I bring this up to go into this album, because Zeppelin has nothing to honestly do with this, is when I was in high school, I wrote a song with one of my buddies. I wrote kind of like the melody behind the song, this beautiful kind of like pretty melody, which I wrote out based kind of off of a pattern I had learned from a song I was Spiral Architect from Black Sabbath. I was kind of learning how to play the opening to Spiral Architect from Black Sabbath, and I liked the picking pattern. I wanted to try it out in different ways on different chords, stuff like that. So I was trying it out different ways, different chords, and stuff like that. And I came up with this little pattern that I liked and I thought was really pretty. And I tabbed it out and I gave it to my buddy and I said, "Here, can you do something with this?" So he took it and he kind of played with it with what was there. And he always makes fun of me because I just handed him the sheet, say, "Here, do something." And he had to figure out what the fuck to do with this and he didn't know what the hell to do with it. So he takes my melody I had written out as a rough draft, and he takes it and he makes it sound nice, and then he adds this beautiful solo over top of it to set it off perfectly, and he creates this whole song. And the reason why I bring this up and I mention this is you flash forward 20 years later, and I'm working in a call center and I'm researching between calls or stuff like that. I get bored. I research albums that I'd want to pick up. I go read up on different artists and whatnot on Wikipedia and read what was written in Wikipedia, because it's not necessarily a review or not a critique of the album. It's just an overall review and it gives you information. So it helps you pick out what albums you want to pick out, right? Especially when you don't know an artist well and whatnot. Well, I, through selection and whatnot, ended up picking up Funkadelic's Maggot Brain. Very experimental, man. Whew. I have got mad. Bootsy Collins, man, mad props for him on bass. And then you got George Clinton, man. George Clinton is a beast. Way off topic at this point. Let's get into this album. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this whole giant introduction, it is specifically for the very first song on this album, Maggot Brain. The title track to this album, Maggot Brain. This album blew my mind. This song blew my mind because all of a sudden I heard George Clinton releasing a song I had recorded with my buddy as a demo when I was freaking in high school and had no concept this album even existed. Seriously, my mind is blown. You can hear it in my voice. My mind was blown. It was shattered. I could not believe I was hearing me and my buddy from high school coming out of an album that I had just bought 20 years after me and my buddy wrote the song together, but it had been recorded originally 20 years before me and my buddy wrote it together. Boom! So, at this point, forget it. I will never, ever, ever doubt a band if they say that they accidentally stumbled across something that they were never exposed. Let's be clear. What me and my buddy wrote would have been the demo for what this became, because this is by far a much superior song. There's more instrumentation, there's more mixing, there's more blends in this. This song is a masterpiece at 10 minutes and 18 seconds. My buddy and I had like a 3-minute track, okay? So, and the history behind this, apparently George Clinton loaded up Eddie Hazel. Eddie Hazel was the guitarist. So apparently George Clinton loaded up Eddie Hazel on acid. I believe it was acid, or one of the mind-altering substances, handed them the guitar and said, all right, I want you to play me something that sounds like this. And, kind of happy, blah, blah, blah. And now I want you to play me something that's so horribly depressive. And it totally, you can hear it through the song. And it's just like this, not condoning the use of drugs, just once in a blue moon, they have some really fun side effects. Maggot Brain is the most spectacular, and it's not a funk song. It is, but it isn't. This is a spectacular song. This is a masterpiece of music. All right? And the fact that somehow I and my buddy happen to hit that same wavelength at some point, just the amazing coincidence, it happens. And it blew my mind. And it was one of the most important things I ever learned in my life, that music coincidences do happen. They're unavoidable. Anyways, moving on. Next track after that is followed up with Can't You Get That? Good tune. It's a good tune to follow it up. Moves along quickly. It's an album cut. It's not one that overly stands out to me. No big 4-minute introduction for the song. Then we go on to Hit and Quit It. I like Hit and Quit It. And Hit and Quit It, the reason I like Hit and Quit It so much is, we've all heard the expression hit and quit it in the modern context. And I think that, Hit and Quit It was such a song in, this time period. And the part I got to point out is this album was released in 1970. And then this re-release is, according to this, 2005. 1970, and I know Hit and Quit has been around for a long time, obviously, but as part of the popular modern vernacular, it took quite a long time, right, to kind of get in there. And this song is just great, and you would think there's a lot of sampling in this song and whatnot because the way it's done, but it's all live musicians, it's all live recordings, and it's not really, it's not a lot of it's used for sampling, not in this song necessarily, or it might have been used. Funkadelic and Parliament, oh my god, the amount of sampling that they've been used for hip-hop, rap, and stuff like that, it's insane. It really is. Because the music was amazing. George Clinton put together musicians that could play and are so underrated and so undervalued. And in the great pantheon of guitarists are so overlooked. Really, Eddie Hazel is just brilliant, even when he doesn't have a head loaded full of acid. But realistically, let's look at Jimi Hendrix, who also had a head loaded full of acid, And, okay, let's not do that way, because we're not going to get into those comparisons. But, just the dude, Eddie Hazel, Bootsy Collins, George Clinton. These are names that every kid in school should learn when learning music. Well, at least when learning guitar and bass. Styles that should be taught. Okay? Okay, so from there, we go on to You and Your Folks, Me and My Folks. The time period, you get it. I love this song. I think it is a fantastic song. Or sampling and stuff like that. I definitely sample this one, and I would present it in such a way, because it deserves it. It's a fantastic song. And it should be presented that way, that vibe, that groove, because it's also great music, man. Great music. That's followed up by Super Stupid. Super Stupid Kind of blends. It's an album cut. If you this whole album is fantastic from beginning to end. There is no bad song on this album. There is basically great songs and album cuts. This is an album cut. If you're not digging on the album, you may not dig this song. It's hard to say. Some people might deem it as a bit of a filler. From there, we go Back in Our Minds. I like Back in Our Minds. Back in Our Minds is another fantastic tune. Simple, easygoing, but really digging. And where you come, if you go from where this album started out with a big head of acid playing this beautiful guitar solo on this instrumental, basically instrumental track that was Maggot Brain at the beginning, and you get to track 6, which is Back in Our Minds. It's kind of like this kind of cool little progression. We'll call it this cool progressive trip that by the end you're back in your mind. And I'm not saying by the end, because this is not the last song on the album, but at this point you go on to Wars of Armageddon and the album takes a totally different turn. Because Wars of Armageddon is kind of more like Beatles' Revolution number 9 as a comparison. The Revolution number 9? Not the cool, you say you want a revolution. Not that one. I'm talking that big, weird, long-ass one off the White Album. Don't have the White Album in front of me. I can't remember the exact name, sorry. But, the big, long noise-scape kind of artistic piece that John and Yoko kind of envisioned together and put together sort of thing, right? That's what Wars of Armageddon is here, except for Wars of Armageddon is like so much better! Wars of Armageddon clocks in at 9 minutes and 43 seconds. It does not feel like that. The way it works, the way it moves, the way everything goes on in this song, it is fantastic. I don't like calling it a song entirely, because it really is kind of like a giant soundscape, because there's so much going on. Like, there's music, there's more than just music, there's other stuff going on throughout. A lot of like in today's days, it'd be a lot of sampling, a lot of little add-in clips. Like, this would have been stuff that would have helped inspire Rob Zombie, with Rob Zombie's little punching clips that he likes to do and stuff like that, and the way he likes to present. This whole album is such an inspiration. I'm amazed. I have never heard any of my music inspirations say that they were inspired by this. Like, I'm surprised I've never heard Rob Zombie say that he was inspired by this album, because I can see where he might have picked up stuff for this album, or like there's other musicians out there, and I hope it's I think part of the problem is maybe this music hasn't pushed enough past the racial boundary in the music scape, because it's pigeonholed as funk. It's viewed as funk. It's not seen as the artistic experimentation of music that the 70s, the 60s and the 70s gave us. This doesn't have the artistic envisioning. Like, this has the artistic envisioning you would see from Frank Zappa, that very much John Lennon and Yoko Ono were kind of starting to go for, like I had mentioned. Their music is fantastic, but it's not just the music, it's everything all put together. It's the whole package. It's the album as a whole is just absolutely mind-blowingly brilliant. Like, I could never believe I had never heard anything off this album before. When I heard it, it just blows my frickin' mind to this day. It's that great of an album. Now, when I picked up this album, I made sure to pick up the special edition release with the bonus tracks. You gotta get those bonus tracks. Oops. You gotta get those bonus tracks, because the other thing is, this is the 70s. There were B-sides. They did the B-sides. They released the B-sides. You want to get those B-sides now, or those alt takes, stuff like that, you gotta have them on these albums. So, you got a whole lot of BS. Whole lot of BS is a bitchin' tune, man. Whoa, bitchin' tune. It's just a whole lot of BS. It's a whole lot of BS. Whole lot of BS. It's a whole lot of BS. Oh. And this one, imagine talking about when you look at songs like Madonna's Vogue, you know, all the name dropping crap like that in there, Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, way before all those, they did that, but they were doing it with like chemical formulas that you were finding in food and shit like that. A whole lot of BS. It's just a whole lot of BS. So it's brilliant in that way. It's amazing. Like, whoosh, again, you know, just fantastic. Now, the album, this completely slows down with the next track, I Miss My Baby. Just this total slow down, beautiful R&B, true R&B. I'm not talking that modern R&B crap. I'm talking, you know, Motown, true R&B style music. Like, this song is a beautiful Motown kind of piece. Absolutely fantastic. It's actually, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be us music or US music with Funkadelic that did this together, but the song is just beautiful and pretty and brilliant. The album ends with Maggot Brain. And the Maggot Brain that it ends with is an alt mix. And the alt mix is a beautiful other variation of it. And the reason why I say that is the main melody and the guitar solo that make the song are still the same. There's no variation there. But all the other different instrumentation in that is all done in a different mix. It's all brought in at different times, or it's not altered at all. Because there's points in the original mix where it's completely faded out, and it's faded out for a reason to go with the way the music and the solo was working at the time, and it's faded back in at a certain point. Here, it's not really done so much that way. The rest of the background music's a little more prevalent, and it's, you know, you can hear a lot more of it, and to hear that alternate mix is fantastic. And the alternate mix was actually done in 97, where he went back and he redid it one more time, and just so everybody could hear everything else that was in there, because no one had gotten to hear that there was all this other great instrumentation, because George Clinton's vision was something more dreamlike and fantastical, and this mix doesn't have as much of that dreamlike and fantastical element to it. The whole way around now. You've heard me rave about this album. You heard me talk about this album. The whole story behind this album and all the details and everything that I've talked about are basically in the booklet in here. I'm not pulling out the booklet. It's going to take too long. It's a pain in the ass. Buy this album. You cannot be a music fan without this album. You cannot be a student of music without this album. You cannot be a student of guitar without this album. You cannot be a student of bass without this album. This album is something you must know, you must listen to, you must understand. Listen to it, worship it, get it into your head. I dare to say, this is one of my top 10 selections for all-time you must have albums. And if it isn't in my top 10, it is most definitely in my top 20. So anyways, until next time, because I really rambled on this one. Peace, love, take care, subscribe, get your notifications, leave a comment.